Welcome to the Commvault channel. In this video we will discuss Microsoft SQL database recovery. Please like, share, comment or suggest. Subscribe for more videos, and you can follow us on Instagram. In our previous videos, we discussed Microsoft SQL Server configuration for backup. In this video, we will discuss how to perform SQL database recovery. Expand client computers. Expand client for which you wish to perform restore. Expand SQL Server to see the configured instances. Select the instance to see the configured subclients. For this client, there is only one default subclient configured for backups. There are different ways to view backup history. Let's review a couple. Right-click on the subclient. From the available menu options, select Backup History. Backup History filter for subclient. Backup type specifies that the job history window should display only those backup jobs that correspond to full backup, or differential backup, or transaction log backup, or synthetic full backup, or all of them. You can filter the job history by job ID, or by specifying the range of the job ID. Job status displays those jobs that correspond to a specified job status. You can choose jobs that are completed, failed, killed or all of them. Specify time range displays those jobs that occur within a specified time zone and time threshold by selecting a start day and time, and an end day and time. You can also check the job history using the relative time that would be jobs made in last n hours, n days, n weeks, n months, or n years. Click Advanced. Advanced filter options. Number of operations specifies the number of operations that should be included in the history window. You can select for all operations, or only the specified number of operations. Include aged data includes data from jobs that have already been pruned or aged off. Include backup copy and catalog snapshot jobs include the backup copy operations in the job history window. Click OK or cancel. Once done, click OK. As you see, backup history for the subclient is populated. You need to ensure the job status should be completed for successful restore. You can review the instance name here. Subclient for which these jobs belong to. No failures to be seen. The job start and end times are important for point-in-time recovery. Let's review the job history from instance level, which we recommend. Right-click on the instance. Hover over View. Select Backup History. This is the same window we just discussed. Leaving default options selected. If you notice, the backup history populated is at instance level, so the jobs for all configured subclients will be listed. As discussed before, you need to ensure the job status should be completed for successful restore. If more than one subclient exist, then you see them here. Do note, the job start and end times are important for point-in-time recovery. Let's proceed with different ways for browse and restore. Right-click on the job. Select Browse and Restore. Browse and Restore Options. Under Time Range, you see all the options are grayed out. Under Absolute Time, you see the start time and end time are, as seen here. When you view the content, you see the data that was backed up and available in the selected job, and the same you shall be able to recover. Let's check the other way of browse and restore. Right-click on the SQL instance. Hover over All Tasks. Select Browse and Restore. When you browse data from the instance level, you shall be able to see the backed up data across all of the subclients configured under the instance. Backup and Restore Options. Time Range tab. Compared to the previous window, here, you are able to select desired option. Latest Backup. This option is selected by default, and specifies that a browse operation must display data from the most recent backup, that is, from now, back to the last full backup. Time range. When you select this option, you can specify whether the browse operation must display data up to the specified date, start and end time. Data backed up after the specified date and time will be omitted from the browse window. The time specified considers all the cycles falling in this time range. Do note, this option is not supported by all agents. Absolute time. This option helps to enter a start time and/or end time of backups to restore, along with the dates to choose from. Time zone shows the time zone that applies to the start and end times, below. Start time, end time. These two settings define the window during which the data was backed up. Start time is compared to the job start time, and end time is compared to job end time, as seen here. Do note, the end time should be rounded up to the next whole minute. If needed, you can only select the start time, and leave the end time unselected. You can choose the other way as well, that is, select the end time, and leave the start time unselected. The backup tool considers all the cycles falling in the selected time range, and display the output. Relative time helps to set a backup window, starting a number of days, weeks, months, or years, prior to the current date, and ending with the current date. The browse and restore operation will consider all cycles within the specified time. For this video we proceed with latest backup. Advanced Options tab helps to show objects to restore using following criteria. Database. This option is selected by default, and helps to browse individual databases. File group. Use this option to browse file groups and files for the databases. SQL Granular Browse. Select this option to initiate recovery point creation. This will be used later to perform granular level restore. In a while, we will browse data using each of these options, and check the difference. Selecting Include System Databases will show the system DBs in the Browse window for recovery. Browse from copy precedence. By default this option is not selected, which means the browse happen from the primary copy, with precedence 1. Once you select this option, you should be able to see all the configured primary and secondary copies. Select the desired policy through which the browse operation should be performed. Use Media Agent. By default, the system automatically identifies and restores data from any configured library in the COM cell, even if the media is not available in the original library, in which the data protection operation was performed. This option allows you to select the media agent associated with the data you want to browse. Do note, data can be restored from any compatible library and drive type in the COM cell. We selected database in this Browse and Restore Options window. List media. This would provide options to list media needed for restore within specified time range, along with the total space required to restore the selected data. List media containing index that is required for browse operations. It also provides option to recall media if you are using Vault tracking. Once done, click View Content. In this browse window, we see the SQL instance, and all the databases that were backed up under it. Let's perform File or File Group Browse. In this browse window, along with the database list, we can expand the DB tree to see the DB files backed up under it. You can expand various DBs, and check the database files needed for recovery. Ideally we should be able to see the list here, but for some reason Java is unable to display it. Let's perform SQL Granular Browse. Along with SQL Granular Browse, we are selecting Include System Databases for this browse operation. Via this browse operation, we see SQL databases shown under SQL instance name. Also the system databases are included to the list. Apart from that rest all content is same, as seen during database browse operation. Let's perform a database recovery. Select the database needed for recovery. Click Recover All selected. SQL Restore Options. General tab. Please note, some restore options might vary for single and multiple database restore jobs. SQL Restore Options for Always On Availability group would look like this. We will cover all of these options as well, but the location may be different when compared with Standalone Restore Options. Destination client is the server on which the database has to be restored. If the source and destination server are the same, then you can leave it as is. If you are performing out-of-place restore, then select the destination server from the list. The list displays all the client computers configured within the COM cell, and have SQL Server Agent installed on them. Destination server displays the name of the instance to which the selected data will be restored. If more than one instance exists on the server, select one from the list. Please note, SQL Server databases can be restored to servers with same or higher SQL Server versions installed on it. Source server displays the name of the source server or database, depending on whether an instance or database was selected for restore. Database name displays the name of the database selected for restore. Database state displays the current state of the database. Restore time and time zone specifies the restore time depending on these options. Point in time specifies that the restore operation must restore selected database or databases to the selected date and time. Provide the date and time details under Restore Time. Time zone displays the time zone to which the selected server belongs to. To change the time zone, select one from the list. Recovery types and undo path specifies the type of recovery that must be performed. This is the state of the database after the restore. Recovery is to restore a database and leave the database in an online state. No recovery is to restore a database and leave the database in a restoring state, so you can continue performing restore manually, like manually applying transaction logs, etc. Standby is to restore a database and leave the database in a read-only state. Undo file path is used to specify the path in which the undo file is stored when the recovery type is standby. Once the restore is complete, the SQL Server Agent will use the data from the undo file and the transaction log to continue restoring the incomplete transactions. Hence, once the restore completes, the undo file will be rewritten with any transactions that are incomplete at that point. Restore Options. Unconditionally overwrite existing databases or files. Select this option to restore a database to the same location from where it was backed up. When this option is selected, the data being restored is unconditionally written to the specified location, and will overwrite the files of any other database that is currently using the database name specified. By default, this option is not selected, means restore prevents accidental data files overwrite by failing the job. If you are using proxy client during recovery, you can specify the staging path here. Database displays the name of the database to be restored. You can change the database name here to restore the database to a different location on the same server. We will perform this action in few minutes. File name displays the name of the file in which the selected database to be restored is present. Physical path displays the path of the database and the log files. You can change the database path here to restore the database to a different location. Size displays the database size. If there are many files, use the Find and Replace option to make changes. If you wish, you can also edit each entry manually. Click Advanced. Advanced Restore Options. General tab. Use hardware revert capability if available. This option is applicable for IntelliSnap, snapshot backups only. It specifies whether to revert the data to the time when the snapshot was created. Selecting this option brings back the entire LUN to the point when the snapshot was created, overwriting all the modifications to data since the snapshot creation. This option is only available if the snapshot engine used for IntelliSnap backup supports the revert operation. Startup tab. Priority is the job priority, for which you can use default priority 6 or change the priority of a job between 0, highest priority, and 999, lowest priority. Startup in suspended state helps to start the job in the job controller in a suspended state. Please note, this job cannot run until the job is manually resumed. Ignore the disabled activity control settings. Enabling this option will ignore the disable activity control settings set on the Activity Control tab on the CommServe properties, and continue to run the backup operations. Pre-post tab. Pre-recovery command. You can specify the name or path of the process to run before the restore. Add or modify the name or path, or use the Browse button to search for and select the name or path. We are not SQL admins, but you can add SQL command, or SQL script, or batch script, etc. to be executed pre- or post-recovery. You are allowed the use of spaces in the name or path, provided they begin with an opening quotation mark, and end with a closing quotation mark. Post-recovery command. You can specify the name or path of the process to run after the restore. Add or modify the name or path, or use the Browse button to search for and select the name or path. Ensure to take care of spaces in the name or path by providing an opening quotation mark and end with a closing quotation mark. Run post-restore process for all attempts. You can use this option to run post-recovery process after each restore job, even if the restore job was not successful. Selecting this option will execute the specified process for all attempts to run the phase, including situations where the job phase is interrupted, suspended, or fails. Pre-post impersonation. Use local system account. Normally, the local system account has permissions to access all the data on the local computer. Impersonate user. If needed, you can use a different account for restore. Select this option to enable the username and password boxes. Do note, if the impersonate user account, defined here, is not available, restore jobs using pre or post commands will fail, as this account operates independently of the impersonate user account for backup jobs. Copy precedence tab. Restore from copy precedence. When selected, the system retrieves the data from the storage policy copy, with the specified copy precedence number. If the data was pruned from the primary copy, the system automatically retrieves the data from the other copies of the storage policy, starting with the copy with the lowest copy precedence, and proceeding through the copies with higher copy precedence. The table displays the storage policy, and the storage policy copies corresponding to the copy precedence number. If needed, you can change the copy precedence for restore. Data path tab. If you want the backup to run via a specific media agent and library other than the default one, then select the desired one from the list. Alert tab. You can configure alert for this subclient. Use Add Alert to launch the alert configuration window to view, add, modify, disable, and delete alert. Options tab. Restore to disk. Select this option to restore the backed up data to a disk that is either on the same SQL server or a different SQL server. To restore the data to disk on the same SQL server, in the path box, enter the path where you want to restore the data to. To restore the data to disk on a different SQL server, in other words, out of place restore, on the General tab of the SQL Restore Options, select a server from the destination server list, and then select the Unconditionally Overwrite Existing Database or Files checkbox. The existing database files are overwritten. If you do not select this checkbox, the restore job prevents accidental overwrite of data files by failing the job. After the database files are recovered, you can restore the data to the database by using third-party tools such as SQL Management Studio. Attached to SQL Server applies only for VSS and Snap. As it states, this option is applicable for VSS and IntelliSnap backups performed using Commvault version 10 or later. For VSS and IntelliSnap backups, during the restore to disk operation, the actual database files, MDF, LDF, NDF, are copied to the folder on the destination SQL Server machine. In this scenario, the database can be restored with different names, but physical names should be left intact. All log backups that will be restored as .bak files will not be applied to restored full and differential backups. Restore types. Database restore specifies that the restore operation must restore the selected databases, beginning with the most recent full backup, and then applying differential and/or transaction log backups up to the selected restore time. Step restore is used to perform a step restore by applying the selected transaction log. This option is available only under certain conditions. Recover only recovers the databases to an available online state. No data is actually written. All other options are disabled when this option is selected. Transaction log marks restores transaction marks that exist in the transaction log. For transaction mark restores, DBA must administer and maintain Microsoft SQL Server transaction marks, so that they are available for use by the SQL Server agent. This option is available when the selected database for restore has transaction marks in the transaction log. The restore time list displays a list of transaction marks that exist in the selected database for the given restore time. For some SQL Server environments, you may have multiple databases, for which absolute synchronization of the databases after a restore is critical. When you want to restore multiple databases, you must restore each database individually to the common mark. When you select this option, you also get a couple of other options, stop at mark, and stop before mark. To restore data to the selected transaction mark, select stop at mark. To restore data to a previous transaction mark, select stop before mark. Partial restore. It is known as piecemeal restore. In SQL Server 2005, allow databases that contain multiple file groups to be restored and recovered in stages. The process starts with a restore of the primary file group, then a restore or recovery of one or more secondary file groups. Latest backup data allows restores of the latest backup data on one or more non-system secured database in the SQL Server. You can use this feature to create a spare copy of the primary SQL Server database, hot standby server, within the same domain, a different domain, or across a wide area network. Apply log backups only. This option is only available when the latest backup data option is selected. Select this option if you wish to include only the transaction log backups completed since the last restore operation. The restore operation will then skip any full backup jobs completed since the last restore operation. Skip full backup. Select this option to restore the differential backups and/or the transaction log backups since the last specified date and time, instead of the full backup. Select this option when you have restored the latest full backup by using third-party software, which means that you do not need to restore the full backup made by Commvault. Do note, in such a case, you only select this option when a full backup made using Commvault exists, and that is more recent than the full backup currently restored on the client by third-party software. Drop connections to database. This option is useful to attain exclusive access to a database for restore. Database restore operation fails if exclusive access to the database cannot be obtained. Full backup only is used to restore only the most recent full backup of a database. Verify only is used to run a restore validation job. On successful validation, The restore job returns a successful message in the Commvault event viewer, stating that the query result for the backup set on the file is valid. Checksum. It is used to calculate the checksum on a page during backup as it writes to a disk, and then calculates the checksum on the page during restore as it reads from disk. Mismatched values returned during the validation indicate a corrupted database, or page corruption on the disk. Do note, if you backed up data without selecting the checksum checkbox, do not select this checkbox while restoring that data, because the restore job will fail. Continue after error. Select this option to configure the SQL server, to ignore the errors that occur during restores, and to continue until the job completes. Do note, when data is restored, the continue after error checkbox overrides the checksum checkbox. Leave database in restricted user mode. Use this option to restore the database to a state in which only the owner of the database can access the database. Preserve replication settings. This option is available only when the recovery type option is selected. This is relevant only to full backups, and if the database was part of a replication implementation. This option specifies to restore backups of replicated databases. SQL Server replication allows distributing data to various servers throughout an organization. A published database can be restored to a server other than the server on which the database was created. Backup the replicated databases and their associated system databases regularly. Verify that, after the restore operation, the master and MSDB databases are consistent with the associated system database, in terms of replication configuration and settings. Keep change data capture. This option does not apply to backups that were VSS enabled, or to IntelliSnap backups. This option specifies to restore SQL 2008, or more recent databases, if they were backed up with the change data capture property enabled. With this property enabled, you can query a database for changed data. Querying a database for changed data is useful because all change activity, like insert, update, and delete, is captured and applied to SQL tables. The details of the changes are available in an easily consumed relational format. This option is not applicable for restores with no recovery. This option can only be used during a database restore with recovery. For always on availability group, the advanced restore options are limited, and we have discussed all these options. Once done, click OK, or cancel to discard changes. Job initiation. You can run the job immediately, or schedule it as needed. Click Configure to specify the schedule details. Once done, click OK to start the restore. The restore job should be visible in the job controller. If all go well, then the restore completes successfully. Restore completed successfully. Let's open SQL Management Studio and check on the restored database. Click Connect to connect to the instance. Expand databases. We see the production database and the restored database. We are not SQL admins, but once you verify the restored database is useful, then you need to first take the production database offline, and then detach it. You can then rename the restored database with production database. For this video we take the restored database offline, and then detach it. Go to the location where the SQL files for restored database exist, and then manually delete them, to free the space for reuse. We will end this video here. Do subscribe for more videos, if not already done so. Do subscribe for more videos.